Welcome to the Genesis. In this episode, I talk with violinist, vocalist, and composer Michelle Elani, who was part of the first Art Lab cohort way back when. She is a musician who weaves together different musical and cultural universes into a totally unique and beautiful fabric. Michelle has lit up a great many venues with her music. She's toured internationally with both her own music and as a supporting artist in various capacities around Europe. She's toured with a fusion rock-driven Viking blues band. She's played with the Trans Siberian Orchestra and in sold-out theaters performing silent movie film scores in Texas. And she's brought music to packed jazz and blues listening rooms in Austria, led raucous jams in Chilean bars, as well as other international dives and halls, not to mention an ongoing gig that she has at her current hometown of Portland, Oregon, where she plays regularly at the Laurelthirst. Flowing into her musical soul, into her sound, is her background in classical music, traditional and original Sephardic, that is Judeo-Spanish music, Balkan and Israeli song, klezmer, jazz, blues, rock. It's all in there. Michelle and I talk about family, musical calling, and the search for a sound that feels rooted and free. We discussed the role that music played in her upbringing, how her Jewish identity finds its way into her work and her projects, and what it takes to find one's unique voice as an artist. But for me, the core and the most delightful part of this conversation is our discussion about the spiritual quest that is part of musical expression. Take a listen, see what the show notes contain so you can find her recorded music and take in a performance of hers here in Portland or wherever you might be listening here and beyond. Thanks so much for listening to the Genesis. Michelle Elani, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So glad to have caught up with you. I'm a little jealous because you are in sunny San Luis Obispo and I can actually see the blue sky, and behind me and to my side are gray skies. But what brings you down to San Luis Obispo?
Family is here. We had some really close family friends over the years. A girl that I went to music school with in Santa Cruz years ago grew up on a farm not too far away. And so we kept in touch with them and visited, and her older siblings have some kids that are similar age as my nephew. And so my oldest brother and his family were looking for a new spot out of Oregon, and we ended up exploring and ended up near San Luis Obispo.
So I wanted to actually ask you about family because knowing you as I do a little bit beyond or outside of your work, I know that family is a really core value to you. How do family and music weave together in the life of Michelle Elani?
Love that. I do feel like they're so connected. I'm the only one in my family directly that had the opportunity to study it in terms of a more formal musical education.
Mm-hmm.
And then my brother Avi has pursued it as well over the years, but he's like kind of one of my musical inspiration life coach characters. And then my parents have always been just so deeply musical, even though they didn't go to school for it or anything. But my dad, just like hearing him do prayer songs, or if I handed him a darbuka, he has an amazing sense of rhythm and would always carry a melody. And my mom, I grew up with her just singing around the house at all hours and all the bedtime melodies that I had. So music was in the home.
So it was just in the atmosphere.
My mom actually was approached by like a professional vocal producer that came up to her and was like, oh my gosh, you have a beautiful voice. I could
Really
manage your career. And she was on a different path at that point. But it was interesting just to think like she was just such a natural singer with a really great musicality.
So you grew up with music, and was it clear to you from a young age that you wanted to be a musician, or did you figure that out later?
I always figured I'd just end up on Broadway as an actress. I didn't really plan on the music thing.
That is so funny.
The arts always called to me. That felt like home from a young age. So I'd spend hours doing my monologues and whatever when I was like 6 or 7, and just like rehearsing in my mind and stuff. And I would write songs when I was a little kid. Like my mom said, I would just sit somewhere for hours and sing in all these ancient languages that I didn't know what I was saying. I was just like singing.
That is so
So
interesting. I know you as a non-artist, and in watching you perform, it seems like it's a different Michelle Elani that is in front of the microphone. I know you as a kind of quite quiet and gentle person, but you take the stage a little bit when you're singing, for example. So when you say Broadway, it makes me wonder about that. So actually, let's dive into that here. Let me ask you, what is it hard for you to perform because you are a quiet person?
throughout the years, I've met so many different performers, and maybe a larger percentage than anyone would believe of performers and artists tend to be very introverted and
Yeah.
shy.
Yeah.
And it's like this drive, I know for me, the drive of my art and this quality of sharing and part of this sense that it's part of a higher calling kind of drives you past your natural inhibitions or natural or learned inhibitions. And I know that that's like, it's become a safe space for me to inhabit a larger space, to
Right.
use those words, and where there's this really like gentle, almost self-effacing quality that I really picked up and have struggled with for a lot of my life in terms of even having a voice or even like expressing needs or being clear. Like I think I'm being really strong and clear about something and someone just completely misses it. So I think it has become a safe place, but it was learned by many, many years of working at it and rediscovering my voice. There's a place where you need, I need to be like to push myself in a gentle way to be able to connect and to sort of deliver the message that
Yeah.
I want to get across and that I want to share. I can play to 100 people and get them all dancing and hooting and clapping and in this wild frenetic energy, and then I can also be in this other space where you can hear a pin drop and you're all just in one mind. And it's, but I think within our culture, like the fact that I've developed the skills to do both really well and gather people in and engage. And then you can drop down when you've built the center of the core. And that's something that I grew up very sensitive to and
Yeah.
intuitive about.
And why was that?
I guess my mom is very much like ethereal. I think she has like one foot in another world sometimes and has always been just very in touch with her intuitive side. And growing up, in a small area, and just her dad having some health problems and discovering books about yoga and spirituality. And she was
I
always a
see.
seeker and always teaching
Oh,
herself
wow.
way years before any of these things were really known mainstream. And so
Yeah.
I picked that up where I'm like doing yoga and meditating as a little kid with her. So I was like born into certain practices that are very internal based. And so I really struggled to fit in when I was growing up because I was always thinking about meaning of life and God and divinity and higher consciousness and all these things, and like reading the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita when I was like 9 and having my midlife crisis with all these different stories and mysticism by the time I was 12 and like different things like that.
And so that comes directly from your mom's awareness of and engagement in that kind of consciousness.
Yeah, I believe so. I was always really in touch with that. And so it did make it harder to work the day to day. And I didn't grow up with my dad like on a full-time basis.
Hmm.
Like he would
Hmm.
visit
Hmm.
whenever he could, but
Hmm.
I definitely like very much was steeped in a lot of those practices and ideas.
Is music for you, is it tied into that, like different consciousness?
I think like on a good day, I mean, people use the word channel maybe a lot, and it's hard to think of it as anything else because you are like feeling this direct kind of conduit. And if your channel is clear, and I've known I've had to be careful of that because I'm so in touch with the feeling world and emotion, and also with the empathy and reading a room and unifying a room energetically.
Mm.
And so if I'm feeling really sad, like people come up and say, "Oh, you made me cry," or like very many concerts, people say there's so much emotion and feeling, and I know I've had to really work to like just really be in touch with the fact that I can affect people, because we do affect each other
Sure.
as beings, but it is kind of it is what I feel as part of my higher
Mm-hmm.
practice,
Mm-hmm.
is tuning in
Mm-hmm.
to a frequency and a world. There's
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of these books, again, probably from Indian spirituality that I'm familiar with, like Hazrat Inayat Khan and all these different, like the inner world of music that talk about on an atomic level what goes beyond spoken word and language, and like how are you connecting to the source. And for me, that's the one of the most visceral and one of the most accessible ways. It's like you merge into part of an ocean, and then I'm able to share it. And I guess I am one of those people that is empowered partly by sharing it. That feels like an important
Right.
aspect, even though I feel as fulfilled if I'm sitting in my room and playing
Yeah.
for myself and creating a song. I'm also really great. I can enter that
Yeah.
state as well.
When you are sitting and you're just playing to yourself for yourself, alone in this little, what do you have, like a music room in San Luis Obispo, or where do you play there? To you, that feels like connecting to the source, like capital T, capital S, the source.
I felt ashamed and guilty of all the gifts that were so accessible. You know, people would come up to me and be like, "What's the meaning of life?" Or like, "Why are you so happy?" Or, "You look like you're in touch with like a deeper joy," or like strangers on the street a lot. I finished the fifth grade concert. I just learned to play Twinkle, you know, and this guy's like, "You don't know me. I'm just like one of the dads in the audience. Like, please never stop playing violin. Like, I can see you're connected." And like some
Wow.
people would like experience some level of connection because this was my natural state that felt very much like home for me.
So the analogy is the stone that needs to be gone to reveal what's there. You're likening that to just like the noise of life that needs to be gone in order for the music to emerge. Was that what it?
We're never really apart from the flow. We're never separate, but we've learned like life, you grow up in this world and you learn this idea that you're separate somehow. And then it's like climbing your way back to the what you're already from, in a way, finding your roots spiritually that are never really gone, but we learn these artificial ideas that bring us further away from ourselves and have to like retune. You're always retuning your instrument. Get back in touch.
Yeah. So the music, there's a pure source of music all of the time. Maybe is what you're saying, um, and that when you are being your truest musical self, you need to tune into that, or you're trying to let that come through you and to clear away the other things that are not part of it. In order to go from just grooving and connecting to that source to the place where you're trying to share that with people, you have to draw it out through a number of, for want of a better term, technical articulations, right? So you have to learn scales, you have to learn arpeggios, you have to learn whatever you're learning, triads. How, is there a way you can articulate how do you hold on to the source when you're also having to make those technical artistic decisions that require so much like learning and information?
I struggled with that question for a long time. It's crazy how much it takes just to learn how to play a song. There's like
Yeah.
20 different elements on the left hand, there's so many aspects and things to be conscious of. And so I guess when you talked about that, I instantly thought about driving. My dad was teaching me like on these dirt roads in Montana how to drive a stick shift. I was like a bucking bronco. I was just like,
Right.
oh, whoops, there
Yeah.
went the clutch, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much going on when you're first learning this stuff. You're just like, wow, how will I ever be able to keep this all going and actually functionally go places and be in traffic and have all these other higher level operations happening while I'm doing the mechanics and techniques. And so I would definitely liken it to that, where even though I started out on a Western classical path in terms of my violin training, and sometimes I'm really hard on myself because I ended up through tendonitis and various things, which ended up a happy accident that I got involved in playing Balkan folk dance music and more klezmer music when I was taking a break from Western classical music. And it opened up this world. When you have that sense of that hierarchy in terms of classical musical structure and technique, and the pedagogues and the lineage, and knowing the infinite nature of like how deep you can rabbit hole
Yeah.
on playing the Tchaikovsky violin concerto in your sleep. It's like I shifted gears. I was on a really strong, deep path where everyone's, oh, she's going to Juilliard, she's going to be this and that. And there was that sense like, of course I'm going to do those things because that's the best you can do within the context that I knew and that I grew up playing with in a school orchestra or whatever. And then I shifted to a totally different path. But then on some level, there's that pressure of, oh, I didn't exceed or master the instrument in all the classical ways.
Yes.
But then I actually have a solid, very strong basis of skill. I majored in music. I did it in college, and I've played professionally, whatever that might mean, or full time for the last, I don't know, 15, 18 years.
Right.
Where I never said no to a gig, and I'm like sitting in every type of different context imaginable, where in almost every musical situation, I have a very strong intuition and some sort of technical ability that I can add something and contribute something.
Yeah.
And so I would definitely say, like, at this point where you have your studies and your place where you're doing these technical things and you're growing, and then you're in orchestra and you're working really hard to manage playing as well as keeping it all going here. And then I've worked for years in bands where I've learned to improvise and studied improvisation and different styles. And then you keep it going, and then you're also in the flow, right? Where you put it all on the shelf. And like, I was crippled by the idea of playing jazz because I knew so much about the theory, and I tested out of the highest level of theory in Berklee College of Music. I tested in there. There were 5 people out of 1,500 people entering class, and I'm like with virtuosic jazz pianists from South Africa and a virtuosic Portuguese guitar player and 2 Korean pianists and me. And like, they can play like professional, they're monster jazz players. And I do it all here. And like, I know what I'm doing, but I haven't let myself play it. I haven't let myself make mistakes. I haven't put it into practice. And so moving to Austin right after a bunch of music school in Santa Cruz and Berkeley, then I got to just put all that theory and training on the shelf and put it into practice where, okay, I'm in the flow. I'm going to trust that I've done the homework. So it's always like that balance of technique and muse.
What was it like playing with those jazz improvisers?
Well, I was just like way too shy and way too scared to really get much out of it. I wasn't at the point where I just allowed myself to make mistakes. Like, if you're learning a new language, you need to be able to make mistakes. So finally, when I moved to Austin, I just let myself like say yes.
There's an interview in which Herbie Hancock, the pianist, is talking about playing with Miles Davis in the famous quintet. And Herbie Hancock talks about the fact that they're performing somewhere and he plays what he says is the wrong note. And he said he learned so much in what happened next. And he said he was just aghast and floored because he said Miles looked at him, and then he said what Miles then played next made Herbie's note correct. In other words, Miles recontextualized that mistake. It sounds like you have an immense amount of technical skill and knowledge and information, but it sounds like your goal is, or your process is that's now so internalized that you don't really have to think that consciously about it when you're playing, so you can remain connected to the source. Is that accurate?
At some point, you reach a place where you can trust and let go. And I guess for me, the natural piece has always been connection and feeling. And I guess that was a part I didn't need to learn. And a lot of people have expressed like technical wizards that might have not gotten the
Absolutely.
opportunity in the same way to focus on that. So
Yeah.
different skill sets, maybe that what's natural to someone might be the opposite.
In the background, I can hear birds singing on your side of things, not my side of things.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's so perfect. They're just like offering proof of
I love that.
this the background of our conversation. Did you find something in like the Jewish musical folk tradition that you didn't find in the classical world? It sounds like part of the reason you made the shift had to do with like technical reasons and maybe some health issues. Was there something else you found musically that was satisfying in the Jewish musical folk tradition that you didn't find elsewhere?
Yeah, I think there was just, you could say, an innate connection to some of the harmonic intervals and some of the modes and scales that are used. And for a time when I was more immersed in the Western classical world, there are some composers, of course, that were using very Jewish idiomatic themes and musical lines to invoke, like Ernest Bloch
Yeah.
has some violin work or something that's like using specifically like what we might call klezmer scales
Mm-hmm.
today or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was learning some of those by ear just to challenge myself and just to like think, how would I learn classical music by ear in a folk tradition, because this was inspired by folk music. I've loved a lot of the Bartok pieces because that's inspired by folk tradition too, and that's the way I work as a composer. I'm never gonna isolate parts of myself, but I guess just like a little aside, that was a big part of how I am the eclectic, musically diverse person that I am today. I took a long break during high school, as I alluded to a little bit. I had my sort of existential crisis early when I was reading like the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and like the abnegation of the senses, and you need to sacrifice what you love most. Of course, I love music most. I love violin most, so I had to quit violin to fulfill that spiritual tenet of these sacred texts. And so I
Yeah.
was really sad for many, many years. And
How did you stop playing?
I didn't play through high school, which is like a huge part of your development as a classical musician, where
Wow.
you're like eating concertos for lunch, right? And so I like peaked really early and played for a few years. And then in high school, I put it down because it's what I love the most. So it took me a long time to get back to my roots with it. And basically, we moved back to Santa Cruz after I had finished high school in Portland. We moved there for the last couple of years of my high school, and then we moved to Santa Cruz, and my oldest brother, so he found this amazing music program at Cabrillo College at Santa Cruz, or Aptos, and I got so immersed. I was there from 7:50 in the morning until 9 at night,
Mm-hmm.
taking all the music classes all the time. And after a year, I gave myself tendonitis because I was playing constantly
So
to
wait,
make up for
when
all the lost time.
I see, for spiritual reasons or following the path of the Gita, you decided you had to give up this thing you loved. So you were not, but you must have been yearning to play.
I was yearning, yeah. And yeah, it
Wow.
was a few years before I was playing, and I would go to the co-op lawn and meet some of my orchestra friends, and like I would improvise in all these sort of klezmer modes, but I wasn't playing classical music. I wasn't in training. I wasn't taking lessons and developing the classical skill, but I like would occasionally still just improvise and use some ear stuff. And it was like interesting what was coming out,
Now,
just playing
do,
very occasionally.
do you regret that, or was that spiritually beneficial to you when you stopped playing?
I think I regretted it like right away, and I regretted it for years and decades after. I've been trying to catch up, and like I'm only now sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I have to start with where I am and not regret where I
Mm-hmm.
might have been, like the Juilliard Broadway
Mm-hmm.
path that was really wide open to me when I was pretty young,
Yeah.
and is a completely different world and different path. I'm like embraced that I've gone a different direction, that it's valid. Like I've talked to amazing symphony conductors, and they're like, I can find 100 people or a
Right.
thousand people that can play an amazing
Yeah.
Tchaikovsky concerto. I can't find someone
Right.
that can just improvise in any context and share what you're sharing.
Yeah,
This is a
that's
unique thing to
yeah.
not regret.
What role does the Jewish musical path play in your life as a Jew? What has it meant to you?
Learn to breathe the bridge for themselves in like terms of interpretation and what you have there. And I guess what I've explored, some of it is feels very much I have a lot yet to explore, but for me it's always felt native and intuitive to play in different modes, even different maqam in the Middle Eastern musical context. And there are certain sounds that have always felt like home or a comfort zone. And
Interesting.
I'm very eclectic and I love different musical worlds and I'm excited about everybody's project and contributing in any way I can. But then there is a place where I lived in Austin for about 5 years at least, a little bit more in terms of like back and forth for gigs and stuff. But right after I finished music school in the East Coast, I needed a place that felt like I could just play. I played almost every night of the week, sometimes 7 or 8 gigs a week. I was constantly
Wow.
playing, right? And then I started my own band to make myself sing because I was hired as a fiddle player in everybody's
Right.
band. And there are all kinds of different, like
Yeah.
I was playing in a Cuban vocal trio. I was their improvising violinist in a beautiful string quartet context. I was in a South Indian project. I was in a flamenco project. I was in a pop country project and a little bit of a bluegrassy folk. So I really had open ears. I'm like, how can I contribute to this? I got cast in this really interesting production, Nashville production with a country review of the last 100 years of country and had to work so hard on the right hand. Everyone thinks about the left hand. The right hand is your style in
Wait,
so many
hold
ways.
on, wait. When you say
Yeah.
country, you mean American country?
Americana and country
Oh
music.
my
Orange
God.
Blossom Special, Devil
Oh
Went Down to Georgia, but
gosh.
older Carter family stuff and like
Yeah.
just learning to embody
Yeah.
the sound that was
Mm-hmm.
so different from my sound. You
Yeah.
know, then the singer was like, you just sounded like, what do you call it? Vulcan. And then you really adopted the sound within four
Wow.
days. You
Yeah.
really got into it. And that's part of my gift, I think, that I hear accents, I hear music,
Yeah.
if it's musical accent or vocal accent, but then there is then my own band. I was like, I need to give more energy to my own band. And by the time I moved to Portland, when my nephew was born in
Mm-hmm.
Portland, I had already a lot of playing in Austin under my belt. And I came to Portland, I already had like a musical voice
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and a strong sense of what I had to contribute. And people were just so open
I
to what
see.
I had to share. I have certain mentors over the years, and one of them was like, why are you doing Sephardic music and klezmer music and Balkan music and original music all in one concert? And my response is just
Who I
that
am.
is what makes me special,
Yeah.
too traditional for mainstream and too
Yeah.
mainstream for traditional or whatever it is, because it's my own thing and I'm not creating this museum thing, even though I do study the source recordings and I work really hard to do honor, and it's a lifetime commitment. It's not like a passing fad of like
Yeah.
playing some klezmer music on the side or
Right.
whatever. It's just like something I'm always learning about different traditions in
Yeah.
the Jewish roots way. And
Mm.
people are dancing to my Friday night residency at Laurelthirst in Portland,
Right.
Mississippi Pizza or whatever. And at Laurelthirst, like how many of them know it's Jewish music? Sometimes I often like to contextualize the song and say this is honoring this
Yeah.
or this is from this root tradition or something, but not everyone that just walks in and
Sure.
hears the music and starts dancing, they're dancing to Sephardic music
Yeah.
and klezmer and like
But
a smattering. Yeah.
you embraced the fact that you have this musical diversity, not only of things that you're able to play, but stuff that you love to bring to the world. And you've decided just to embrace that. You don't want to put shutters on it or boundaries because it's just all part of who you are.
I guess like it's both, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this both and thing where part of what is real to me and relevant to me and has been for a long time, sometimes I make something so important and I don't touch it. And like for me, my dad and his connection to Middle Eastern music and Iraqi Jewish music and Iraqi music. Pop. It's this path that I've been putting off the deep dive, maybe on some level, because it feels so raw and so important, and I want to do it justice and be ready to immerse, even though like I can keep doing what I'm doing. And then I've always looked for a mentor, and I haven't really lived in places where I've had like really easy access to people that are just steeped in Middle Eastern musical traditions.
So your father, his background was Mizrahi Jewish,
Yeah,
and
he grew up from Baghdad.
but you have not yet studied formally. It sounds like what you're saying, those like Iraqi Jewish traditions. Is that right?
Like a little bit.
Yeah.
I haven't done the deep dive. I've had workshops and lessons and summer camps, and like even played some concerts in different contexts. But just to say that I'm fully embodying it, I want to start diving more in. It's just so deep and so vast. I put it on such a pedestal, and I'm afraid to approach it, that I'm like not worthy. And I know I'm worthy, and it's like I know it's time to give it more time, because I've like definitely dipped a toe a lot. And on an intuitive level, I write pieces that use some of the musical nature of how those maqams may act, but just to really honor that commitment more.
What's beautiful to me, and maybe trying to loop back to the beginning of a conversation, but the universe provided the following, and one could go beyond that. And different cultures have just different ways of dividing that up and trying to make beauty out of it and connect people to the source. But that sound is just there. And it's so like natural. It's just that little tiny bit, however many octaves a human voice can go, whatever, has created this like near infinity of expression. And I just think there's something so beautiful and unifying about that. There's in some ways there's an enormous distance between
Ravi Shankar.
Sure. Ravi Shankar, that's not who I was thinking of, but yeah, Ravi Shankar and the Carter family. It's a huge difference. On the other hand, it's really not. They're all trying to do the same thing, right? They all have these sounds, and they're trying to connect to it. So that's what comes up for me as you talk about all these different traditions. They come together in you as a person, and you're trying to find out how to articulate them.
As long as we've been alive, music is the original instrument, is the voice.
Yeah.
And hands and percussion. And it's like we're just having new expressions of that are iterations on the source of that. There's something about music that has this deep meaning, this power to move people on an emotional internal level that defies some explanation. To some extent, we can hypothesize and theorize and articulate some of it, but there's some of it that's like the vibrational quality that just is above or just what words can carry.
Yeah, I think that's right. So what is a maqam?
I guess the way I use it and my understanding of it, it's like we talk about Western scales and things like that and modes. It is the closest thing, probably the Western word mode, but it's for me the Middle Eastern scales or modes that act as a collection of pitches, usually two jins or two four note groups that stack on each other, and they act in different ways depending where they are in a melody and how they're contextualized.
Got it.
These notes are not just going to be sharp or flat, but the context matters so much in terms of this music.
Okay, so it's like a fundamental structure of Middle Eastern music, basically.
Yeah, you could say a scale or a mode in Middle Eastern music. Like you might have heard of Bayati, which is closer to the Ahava Rabbah, or like you have harmonic minor from the fifth degree in Western music or something like that. There's some Western equivalents, but then you're also incorporating some of those quarter tones, say.
I see. Tell us what you're working on right now.
Gosh, some of it is looking at an orchestra gig, because I haven't played in an orchestra for so long. And I played in Middle Eastern music ensembles in college. Like my mentor, Beth Bahia Cohen, was at Tufts University for many years, and probably still is in Boston. And so I worked in different groups in Boston, and I'm also looking at this cool orchestra in Portland that I'm probably going to do some work with. And then I'm going to New York in a couple weeks to play at my favorite bar of all time. That's called Barbès.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Barbès.
Oh my gosh, I love Barbès. Not only do I know Barbès and love Barbès, we used to live 2 blocks away from
No
Barbès,
way.
something like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
used to love to go in there any night, and you will hear these unbelievable musicians playing 4 feet from you. So what's the context that's bringing you to this magnificent center of music in Brooklyn?
Like April 17th, and I know the owner. He's fantastic, Olivier, and I used to write to him all the time. And then it was like, and then COVID happened, and
Yeah.
so I used to come to New York a lot more often. And in 2013, or I lived there for some months in Bed-Stuy, but I was at Barbès many nights of the week because it was just like it became like my living room.
Well,
Many nights.
I'm in Portland, people can still hear you do your thing, right?
Yeah, I've kept my Laurelthirst residency. It's the last Friday, happy hour 6 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I also sometimes play Mississippi Pizza
Mm-hmm.
when they have a special event, and various private or public things as they occur. Some Ukrainian folk music colleague that throws these beautiful concerts, fundraising type, like variety shows or some things. And I'm also still working with, I'm at Artichoke Music on May 30th as well.
Okay, great.
And that's a nice intimate listening room. And there are a lot of people that I've had such a pleasure of playing with over the years that I'm like, we've had different times in the studio of building out a few different songs that I've just been so overwhelmed with the back end post-production stuff during the pandemic and whatever. So all these masters have just sat there waiting for love, and I'm just like gonna try to revisit some of the old recordings, try to pull together forces and build out some studio sessions with people, since I'm in Portland a lot less and in California more and in New York more, and just slowly building some energy away from Portland as well. Just basically to grow musically. Like I love it so much, and I love the community and the people so much that I do keep coming back and want to cultivate and don't want to lose what I've built in those relationships. But I'm also looking to create space and grow. Like I'm playing at Starry Plow and Ashkenaz in Berkeley, and some of the Balkan and klezmer communities, Peter Bonos and Mike Perlmutter and the people down there, and Sean Turgis, they're like movers and shakers in the Bay Area, Greg Jenkins, like all these people that I knew over the years when I was living in Santa Cruz and discovered Balkan music, and then Brooklyn also to work more on the Middle Eastern side of things, like work with John Murchison, or there's just so many musicians there that I love working with.
So you've got a lot cooking, some possible orchestral pieces, some places all across the country you're looking to put yourself just into to continue to grow musically and to express these different voices that you have in you. Amazing.
And I should say also Spain is on the table. That for a while before the pandemic, I was touring Spain every summer, every year for 6 to 8 weeks. And I had my third album recorded there, and it was just such a highlight. So I'm hoping to go back this fall and build some work there as well with folks.
Beautiful. People who are listening to this, wherever they may be, it sounds like there's a chance that they might be able to find you, at least in some of the places that you mentioned, and they can get that through, I assume, your website, which we'll post in the show notes to find out where you're playing around. And certainly if you're in Portland and you're listening to this, you should go see Michelle at the Laurelthirst, which is your remaining residency here. Believe it or not, our time is almost up, and I want to close by just asking you these two questions. One is, what is one thing that Michelle Elani loves that you want to share with you just want other people to know about?
I guess I was thinking about that, and first I was thinking about food. There's the but tamar, or the date cookies, and they're like these little cool pocket cookies that my mom would make that are just date filled, and what's
the tradition? Where do those come from?
I maybe they're around. I think like Mamul is some
Yeah.
Egyptian or like another Lebanese Egyptian or Pan Middle Eastern
Oh my
name for
God.
them. But tamar is the kind that she folds over. My
Yeah.
mom and my grandma would do it. My grandmas would do it the same way. And so I grew up helping make some of those. So some of the homemade treats from our family tradition.
So
of
sorry,
the
tell me
Iraqi
again,
Jewish,
tell me what it's called?
the Iraqi Jewish thing, we call it but tamar, and
But
tamar
tamar.
date, and
Yeah.
but is the cookie part that we would make, and we have a fun gluten-free vegan version that we do.
I
And
will
then
bet.
I
I
was
will bet you people on this show have heard a lot of recommendations for different best Jewish foods, but I don't think anyone has mentioned but tamar. So I love that.
okay,
Sounds
great.
delicious. Yeah.
Awesome. And then I was thinking also about just tarab, which is an Arabic word, and my
Mhm.
last name is an Arabic word, Al Anna or of Ini, this little place in Iraq where my family, my mom's side was from a different area in Iraq as well. And basically, it is the word that talks about evoking joy and transcendence and deep musical connection or longing, tarab. And also, I don't know, like ruach or nefesh, or like these words that bring in what we were talking about to come full
Beautiful.
circle, that have to do with that longing, that ecstatic connection that is beyond joy or
Beautiful.
sorrow.
Wait, sorry.
that
What's
we
the phrase?
touch.
What's the phrase again?
So tarab is the Arabic word for that
Arab.
musical ecstasy, transcendence, longing.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's
So
that.
my
It's
dad
such.
taught me that.
I
And one of my middle names is Joy in Arabic. So
love
yeah.
that so much. Well, Michelle
Thank
Elani, I really love the time with you, and I love hearing how you think and feel and talk about music. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.
All
Such a
right.
pleasure. I
All
was
right.
so honored we got to get to know each other some years back and work on projects.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
It's an honor and a joy. Take care.